Hey everybody, welcome back. Another episode of Video Game Collectors on Call. Today I have another collector with me that I found online, and today we have the Rogue Orange with us. How's it going?
It's going pretty good, actually. How are you doing?
Good, good. So thanks for being here with me, sharing parts of your collection. I have seen some pictures that you've sent me, and we have some cool stuff to
Yeah.
talk about. But the first question I have for you actually is about your name. So the Rogue Orange. I don't think that comes from any video games, but if it does, let me know. Where does it come from?
So the funny story about that is that I was like starting to like do TikTok videos and I didn't have like a good username. And what I like to do is I like to like think of things that are like creative, but then I have to go online to make sure somebody else isn't using it.
Yeah.
And what I had the way I came up with this name is that I had gone onto one of those like word generator websites and I had it do like an adjective and like a noun or like a verb or whatever, and I kind of just stuck them together, and thankfully nobody else was really using it at the time, so I kind of just stuck with it.
Okay. So it wasn't particularly like orange was related to some like favorite color or something. It just happened to be orange.
Funny enough, orange is actually not my favorite color.
Okay. All right.
It's actually purple, so
Gotcha. Okay. No worries. When would you say you started, what's your earliest video game memory? Like when you started loving video games?
so it's a little bit foggy for me before I was 5, but around that time I have memories of going to my grandmother's, playing on the old NES and the Super Nintendo. And there was a time, like maybe a year or two later, where my dad's friend's son, he actually gave me one of his hand-me-down original Xbox. It was like a version 1.2, I think, because he had just gotten an Xbox 360, and it was like the coolest thing I had ever seen. And then another coworker, I just seemed to luck out with the hand-me-downs because one of his younger coworkers, he was like in his early 20s. He was my age. So he gave me a cobalt blue 001 Game Boy Advance SP, and I love that thing to death. It's no longer with us. It's corroded. It's rusted. I found it in the garage. It's a DOA.
Okay.
But yeah, basically is about as early as I can remember things. I can remember being involved in video games in some fashion.
Do you remember which games you were playing when you went to your grandmother's house? You mentioned Nintendo. Is there a specific game that stands out in your mind?
The game that I remember the most was actually Super Mario 3, which is still one of my favorite games. And what's actually
Yeah.
funny is that I later find that there was an early print of Super Mario 3 where the Bros is actually printed on the left side of the cartridge, which is a bit more rare. And
Correct.
it turns out all those years that was the one I was
That's
playing.
when you
And
had
then
it.
eventually when she gave all that stuff to me because she didn't have room in the house anymore, she just gave it to me, and I realized I had one of the rarer versions of Super Mario 3.
Yeah, yeah. So what he's talking about is the Left Bros design. So if you look on even the game cartridge as well as the box that it comes in, the BROS or the Bros is on the left side, whereas the more common finding is you see it on the right side where it says BRO. And I actually have a copy of each that I need to
So do I,
post and show
yeah.
sometime. Yeah, but it's nice to have both. Well, what about when did you start turning this into collecting? You know, how old were you, or what was going on in your life where you're like, I need to collect as many games and rare things that I can.
So really, so the thing is I never got rid of any of my Xbox 360 games. I have probably about 155 games. I've cataloged them all. But really the collecting didn't get serious until about 2020 when everybody else was bored and had nothing better to do.
Right.
Yeah, found that, like I said, I found that Xbox. I actually found it in the garage and I was hoping it would still work. I cleaned it up and it seemed to work great. And
Mm-hmm.
the repair video I used to like learn how to do that just sent me down a rabbit hole of like other YouTubers like Scott the Waz, Metal Jesus Rocks, and like all those kinds of guys. And then as I watched more and more of that stuff, I got more and more interested. Whether it was games or consoles, I just started getting far more interested. And then 2021 is like where it really started picking up because I was able to like order things from Japan because I had seen the Nick Robinson video where he had used Bai as his Japan proxy to get the McDonald's games.
Okay. Yeah, I've not actually heard of that method of purchasing games from Japan. Can you tell me a little bit more about that, or for people who are listening?
So there's a bunch of different like Japan proxies that you can use, but the one I use is Bai. What they do is that it basically is a website where it hosts all these different like Japanese shops. And what they do is that well, in the case of Bai, you can just connect your debit card right to there. And from there, you can find things you like on, say, Yahoo Auctions Japan. And if you really want it, you can have them bid on it for you, and using your money you can like win these auctions. And what then they'll do is that they'll take these products that you win or you buy off like Japan Mercari, and they'll send it to a warehouse and they'll keep it there until you're ready to ship it out. And then when you're done buying everything, you're able to pay to have it consolidated, like made into one package, and then
Hmm.
you pay the shipping and then they send it to you. Shipping's pretty expensive considering it's coming from Japan, so my best advice if you're ever doing that is to just get as much stuff as you can to make the shipping cost worth it, because buying just one item, $20-$30 for shipping for one item is a lot. So
Right.
if
Yeah.
you're budget conscious, that would be the way I would go about it.
Okay, that makes sense. What would you say if someone asked you, what do you collect? Do you just collect everything, or are there specific things that you focus on?
When I started doing collecting, it was a lot of, the experiences I didn't have growing up. Like I never had a Nintendo DS, or I never owned a GameCube or a PlayStation 2, or like like a PlayStation Vita. It was at the beginning, it was more like um stuff that I hadn't experienced in my childhood, like very simple things. But then as time gone on, it fell into like a rabbit hole, and it became like more rare, more obscure things that were a little bit harder to obtain, and things that, I thought were way too cool to not have. And it kind of just, so it's kind of like, I like collecting the weird, like when it comes to consoles, I like the cool, like rare consoles, but when it comes to games, I like the like weird stuff that nobody would ever think to collect.
Yeah.
Like I
I
have
think
I have a sealed copy of iNinja PS2 demo disc that I guarantee nobody else has, but it's worth absolutely nothing.
okay. All right. That's a little bit kind of opposite of me. So, you said you started by trying to find things that you didn't have as a child, or didn't get a chance to play. I think I started the opposite, where I, went after Super Nintendo, regular Nintendo, Nintendo 64, PlayStation, things I grew up on. And now since I've collected most of those games that I want to play, now I'm branching out and trying to find things that I've either never experienced, or maybe rare and obscure things, kind of like you're mentioning.
Yeah, and ever so yeah, yeah. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, no, you're fine. Go ahead.
And it's every so often that I just try to rebuild some of my collection back, because my original Xbox library and Game Boy Advance library was either lost and or sold like a long time ago, and the games I can remember very vividly are the ones I try to go after. Like Baseball Advance for the Game Boy Advance, it's a terrible game, but I remember playing it so much
Yeah,
that
it's
as
important to
soon as I
you.
saw yeah, as soon as I saw it, I had to have it. And then Namco Museum, also for the Game Boy, I had to have it. Championship Bowling for the Xbox, again, another terrible game, but I played it so much that it's like a what's the word I'm thinking of right now? It's sentimental.
Yeah, sentimental, exactly. So, what are your thoughts on emulation? A lot of people, don't have physical copies of games, or they'll play these older retro games through some sort of emulation, and how do you feel about that?
So for me, I feel like playing it safe and emulating the games that you definitely own is the way I would normally go about it. But if you see like a copy of like Pokemon Violet or whatever, and it's like $5 bajillion, and you don't want to pay that for a physical cartridge, honestly, it really doesn't bother me if you would prefer to emulate it instead, because I personally wouldn't pay that much for a game like
Sure.
that, like a game that should be a lot less.
But yeah, the
So
prices are definitely have gone up over the past couple of years, maybe higher than they need to be. What?
now,
Go ahead.
Now, with like the more modern systems, though, I would be a bit more careful about that. Like the Switch, I wouldn't try and emulate that at all, because you know
Right.
how Nintendo is right now. They're on their
Right.
lawsuit game.
Right.
But yeah, like the older systems, like the Super Nintendo, the NES, Atari, like who cares, right? They don't sell those games anymore, and they haven't in a long time. So I doubt
Exactly.
anyone's getting really hurt by it, like
True.
companies or anything like that.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. What would you say the rarest item in your collection is?
The rarest item. Okay,
Yeah.
I have it right. I have it right here on my desk,
Sweet.
actually.
Let's see it.
There's about three of them. I don't know if that's okay.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
so what I
just
have here are three prototype Nintendo Switch docks.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go through them here if you don't mind. I'm gonna kind
Yeah.
of tell the differences.
Sure.
So in chronological order, the first one that I got was this X4 prototype.
Okay.
It's got these like stickers and everything on it,
Okay.
and it's made with this like kind of cheap glossy plastic, so it's like it's not like high quality,
Hmm.
but it was meant for testing, so it really wasn't, the quality really shouldn't matter. This one
So
here is
if you have a
good.
Switch like the controller and the screen, if you have one of those, can you put it in that, or does that have to be a special prototype for that as well?
So these X4 and X5 ones actually have prototype boards in them, but from my experience of testing them out, using like retail switches to put in the dock usually works just fine as long as you have everything hooked up properly.
Gotcha.
Because you see it back here,
This
it looks
yeah
like a regular,
yeah it's very similar.
yeah, very similar. Just doesn't have like the Switch logo on the front or nothing like that.
Hmm.
Now this one is probably my definitely the rarer of the three. This is also a Switch dock, but this one it's an
Wow.
unused design. I did jerry rig it so that I could like use it as like a working unit. Like
Okay.
this entire back piece came from a retail dock. So when I got it, it was just this like
So
this
it's
front
open.
piece here.
Yeah, it's open on the side essentially, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's got like the little speaker holes like right here. It's got the same USB-C mechanism. It's got
Okay.
when I got it, it was just the front piece, and the camera probably can't pick it up, but all of the like legal information is completely reversed. It's printed
Hmm.
completely backwards compared
Hmm.
to like how a retail unit, and that's how like Nintendo always prints their like prototype like legal stuff is that they always print it backwards on the mock-ups. And the model number,
Is there a reason for that, or it just how they do it?
I think I honestly couldn't tell you. I don't work at Nintendo, so I
Right.
wouldn't know the first
Yeah.
offhand. But my guess is that they kind of just do it to make sure that people know that something's just not right about it.
Yeah.
Right here, you can actually see, you can't really see it, but the model number here is like
Hmm.
three X's, and
Hmm.
the serial number is the letter A, but copied and pasted about five, six, seven, 8 times.
Gotcha.
But
That's
the
nuts.
Nintendo logo here is printed perfectly straight as opposed to
Hmm.
backwards here. So I don't know, make it make sense. I
Yeah.
have tested it. It does on TikTok. I did make a video about doing that actually, and it does work.
Okay.
I've
Those are no, those are cool. I've never seen those before. I know before we started talking, you said you had some other stuff sitting next to you. What else do you have to kind of some rare items that you have?
All right. So here we go. This first item was the more recent item that I picked up, and this is a the Game Boy development unit. This is a
Okay.
ISCGB emulator.
Okay.
So you connect a ribbon cable here to connect the Game Boy to the system because when you plug it into the computer, this Game Boy isn't really the Game Boy, it's more like a controller. You can see
Okay.
the game on screen, but none of all the processing power is in here. It's all
Okay.
encased in here. And it's got SCSI on the back. It's got a nice little dip switch. It's very satisfying to click. And it came
And
actually with
and
the
and
Go
do you
ahead, sorry.
have
Yeah.
the ability to use that? Like, do you have everything you need to kind of use that, or is it not workable in its current state?
So in its current state, I have the power adapter to plug it into the wall. Which is what I was going to get to with the ribbon cables. They're called probe cartridges, and what they
Hmm.
do that's what hooks up the Game Boy to the machine. Is that these special cartridges? They're called probe cartridges.
Wow.
There's a connector under here to connect it to the power, and then this will connect into the system, and the cartridge just goes into the cartridge slot like it normally would.
So is there a game? Is there a game on that yellow cartridge there?
No, this is the probe cartridges are mainly just kind of like a connection
Okay.
between the system and the Game Boy. And this one's another one. Funny story about this one. This one was made in-house by the studio who owned this. They needed a probe cartridge, so they just chopped up a Japanese Game Boy game and just did it real fast.
Wow.
You
Yeah. I'm
can see
sure.
it's
Yeah.
like it's very jagged, very very not clean cut. Then the Game Boy itself, Game Boy itself. Sorry, I like to keep things in like the bubble wrap that it came in, just so nothing
Yeah.
happens to it. But yeah, this is the um, Game Boy
Okay.
that it came with. And you
Okay.
see there, it doesn't have the batteries in it. It has the connector that this is what connects to that power port on the probe cartridge. That's what gives this thing power. The power comes from the system. To get it running though, I do need a computer that runs at least Windows XP or
Hmm.
something earlier. And it also needs to have like the ability to connect SCSI ports. So I'm looking at a computer that's at least 30 years old for this to actually work. But I do have the programs and everything, so it should work once I have everything, all the tools I need.
So when you say it will work, if you were to hook this up to a computer, would you personally be able to like make a Game Boy game, like create one
Personally,
theoretically?
theoretically, this was meant more for like debugging. So this
Okay,
machine was meant more for like debugging. It was more like testing. So the system on the bottom has this options and it tells you what you can do with it. So this one is a color Game Boy debugger. So like basically you would load the prototype game onto the system and you would test it and it can show you the code in real time and it can catch any bugs or anything like that and you can fix it in real time.
gotcha.
And then
Okay.
similar thing over here because this also works with the Game Boy Advance because they made sure to make sure that happens. This also has the debugger feature for the advanced Game Boy, and it also can emulate the game as well.
So it works for original Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, correct? Nothing else past
Yeah,
or
yeah.
okay.
Uh,
Gotcha.
the color, Game Boy Color, and the Game Boy Advance specifically.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome. No, that's definitely cool stuff. What else do you have sitting around? There is one item I think that I remember you showing me that hopefully you're going to show that off.
oh, absolutely. One second here. So this is the coup de grace of the collection. I really didn't know where to go with collecting after I had obtained these. But but in chronological order, the Game Boy, the not the Game Boy, the Mike McDonald's DS training games.
Yeah. So
These were good. Sorry.
these were in Japan, correct? So this is how they train their employees, right? They had DSs, and these cartridges would go in there and have sort of training information and information for the employees, right?
That is correct. Yeah. So it only ran for. There's actually been new evidence to show that this was used up until about 2018, but not. It wasn't very popular after about 2011. People kind of just stopped talking about it. At least in Japan.
When did it
But
start?
yeah, 2010, 2011, I think. I can't really remember off the top of my head, but
Okay,
they used this for the longest time. I think it was more like a way to try and get like teenagers to work at the store because
makes
it's this
sense.
cool way of training with
Cool.
something you're familiar with.
Yeah.
And then I eventually picked up the DS.
So that's the training DS that they would use to put those games in.
Yeah, so I have a dummy one in here, so but yeah, you would take it in there and it works like a regular DSi would. It is region locked, so it'll only play Japanese DSi games, but it does play like regular DS games. It's region free in that aspect. It doesn't really work right now. I have to address some power issues that have just come up for no reason at all, just to mess with me. But yeah, pretty much just a regular DS, and it's got a McDonald's logo on it, but it's really sought after, so of course people are going to pay a
Right.
lot of money for it, and it's going to be held in high regard. And to keep,
Have you placed those cartridges in and turned them on and played them before? The training
I have
games?
I have so eSmart doesn't need the password. It's kind of like a more simplified version of it. It's a later stage where it doesn't need like a password or anything like that. So anyone with this cartridge can just play it and without any issue. This card the ECDP is the one that has the password on it. So if you don't know the password, I would definitely recommend finding someone who knows how to do that because I certainly don't.
Yeah. So you haven't been able to do anything on that one essentially since you don't know the password.
Well, actually, this one is the one where I actually had someone help me get it.
Very good.
Code 1038. I don't know if you saw that Nick Robinson video. Cody Tron Twee. He's part of the ECDP Discord server. I actually got into contact with him, and once I got the cartridge, I dumped it and I gave it to him, and within like half an hour, he had actually found all six passwords that were on there.
Awesome.
It's honestly pretty incredible.
What is on those cartridges when you put them in? Like what's on the screen? What happens?
So what eSmart is a little bit less exciting. It kind of just goes like to the it kind of just goes to the main menu. It really doesn't have like any special animations or anything like that. But when you put in ECDP, it has like this specially like orchestrated McDonald's theme song that plays. One screen has the McDonald's logo on it, and then another one, and then the other screen kind of has like a preview of what the game's about. It has like all the mini games and like McDonald's customers and things like that, like real life photos and stuff like that. And then it goes into the main menu.
What are some of the mini games that are on it?
So some of the games are like, cleaning, making like sausage, making
Okay.
like breakfast items, making eggs, making like hash browns and fries, cleaning up the store, working a drive-through, things like that, like all the things you would expect.
Yeah.
Although for some reason, and it was brought up a while ago in the community, and I thought it was interesting how there's no training for chicken nuggets in this
Yeah.
game at all.
One of the most popular items at McDonald's, I would think.
Right, and they have the chicken McNuggets in Japan, so I'm like kind of
Yeah.
confused why they don't have that. And also, when you play the Teriyaki Mac mini game, they don't have you wipe your hands when you're making the Teriyaki Mac, which is weird because every other mini game requires you to wipe your hands while you're
Interesting.
putting the stuff together. Not sure
Interesting.
about that.
Yeah.
And then
Interesting.
and then the other ones I have that are actually in the box is another copy of ECDP. This is the one where I don't really know the password, but it has everything in it. It has
Oh
the
wow.
instruction manual, has the whole bit. And then eSmart, which is the one that people really don't know about, is
Yeah.
um, it came after ECDP, I think. A lot from the speculation, it's just a rebranded copy of ECDP. Basically, it just has a different cover art, and you're not going to be able to see it on screen. But this ECDP has a specific serial code, while this one from the eSmart has a different one. So this one ends in
Gotcha.
22, and this one here ends in 34. So
Gotcha.
it's definitely different in some capacity, but I've tried to play it, and it's basically just ECDP again. Except I really just don't know I don't know the password for this one either, and it's
Gotcha.
actually Oh wait, actually it's blank. I forgot
Okay.
that's the one that's actually blank. There's nothing on it. So
Gotcha.
that's like a friend. It was like wiped because they'll do that too before they sell
Oh
these.
wow.
Is that they'll wipe them to keep people from getting personal data from strangers that they don't know.
No, that makes sense. How
So
much
well,
value
it's
are how much value are we talking with all of that McDonald's stuff? So you've got the DS, you've got the two games in case, you've got the two that aren't in case. What would that go for on like an auction, do you think?
so like with these kind of things here, these things come up so few and frequent that it's really hard to gauge the value of these kind of things based on its rarity. So you kind of just pay whatever the seller asked for it if you really want it that bad. Although a lot of the times when you're looking on like eBay or Yahoo auctions, the prices on these things are ridiculous. I've seen people buy a complete inbox copy of eSmart 2.0 for like $1,000.
Wow. Did you get this from
Like I've seen
Japan or did you get it in
all
the
all
US?
Well, all the games came from Japan. The DS actually came from a buddy of mine who had actually gotten this DS from Japan in a junk DS lot where, they just take a bunch of broken DSs and
Yeah.
they just
And
pack it all in one and sell it off. And
and
he just
they
happened
probably
to get it.
they probably didn't realize one had the McDonald's logo on it. They just threw them all
Yeah,
in a box and
yeah, they just wanted to get rid of it. So
okay.
he already had one, so he just offered to sell it to me and I took him up on it. It was significantly cheaper than what you find on eBay, although it doesn't really work right
Yeah.
now.
So would you say that's your favorite item in your collection, the McDonald's stuff?
I would definitely say that it is the thing that I spent the most time
Yeah.
looking for a set
Yeah.
of this kind of stuff. The games themselves, I found that video when Nick Robinson first posted it, and then it took me, if I remember correctly, it took me about between 16 and 18 months to find the games for sale. From the time I found that video, it took me almost a year and a half to actually find those videos. So like around spring 2022 is when I actually found those games for sale on Yahoo auctions. So it took a very long time of
Okay.
looking to just to find those
Yeah.
two games.
Okay. Do you have anything else next to you to kind of show off any other cool stuff in your collection?
Yes, over here I got this back in December, but This is a 3DS Panda. This is a 3DS development unit. It's an American unit, but and while I do already have one of these, what makes this one special is that it has a Sega of America asset tag on it.
Oh, so why
And
why is that?
because this 3DS was belonged to Sega of America and it was rented out to the studios that would use it to like make and test their games pretty much. And
I
from
see.
I looked on I looked at the user information on here. It said it belonged to Sanzaru Studios. And that checked out because I went into the activity log on this because I'd like to do that with the development units. And I actually
Hmm.
found they were actually testing Sonic Boom Fire and Ice on this system
Wow,
about 2 or 3 months before it released in America. So
very cool.
they were actually developing the game and testing it on this specific system.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's
So, in terms of, maybe not some rare things, but what about for you? What's maybe the worst game you ever played, or a game you played and you were like, man, this game's so awful? I always like to hear that from people, the answer to that question.
well, I haven't played it in a long time. Terminator, is it Terminator 2 or Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines for the PS2?
PS2? Okay. Wow.
It was without a doubt it is one of the worst games I ever played. Like I like playing bad games because it's funny how bad they are, but this one was frustratingly bad.
Kind of
The start
unplayable.
Yeah, to start, the cinematics going into the cutscenes don't look that bad.
Hmm.
But then when you play the game, but then when you actually go into the gameplay, it feels like you're playing a game from like 1995, like the
Wow.
Sega Saturn 3D games. That's what it feels like
Sure.
with the graphics.
Sure.
And then the worst part about it, I think it was what frustrated me the most was the controls. Oh my gosh, the sensitivity, the controls just did not work. The controls just did not work. Even if cranking up the sensitivity low, cranking it up high, keeping it at default, it did not matter. The game just did not control well at all. I couldn't get past the opening stage because I
That's
just could not,
frustrating.
I couldn't take out a single enemy because I would move my thumbstick and it would take at least a half second for it to like to like turn him over.
That's
It was,
definitely frustrating. I've definitely played some games like that for sure. What about your favorite game? Like, do you have a game that's like, if you could keep one game ever, what would it be?
oh, dude, Madden 2008, Madden
Wow.
'08 for,
I was not
well,
expecting that to be a response. I've never heard anyone put
it's kind of
Madden.
a top. Well, it's kind of a toss-up. Well, first of all, Madden '08 is my favorite Madden game of all time. But if I were to pick like a non-sports game, I would say definitely Sleeping Dogs for the 360 because
Well,
that
let's go
game is
back.
just so.
Let's go back to
So go
Madden.
ahead.
Go back to Madden. Why Madden 2008? Like, what's specific about that one is better than the other Maddens?
Well, when we talk about it earlier with with the sentiment, there's a lot of sentiment there. That was one of the games I played the most.
Hmm.
That's for that reason and also because the gameplay you look at Madden today and
Mm-hmm.
it's such a trash heap of what it once was.
Mm-hmm.
So for me to go back and relive not only a time of my childhood but also relive a time where I actually had fun playing a football game, I think that's well worth it. The
Yeah,
soundtrack is amazing and I remember all the players, and the superstar mode is so much fun. It's so in depth. You can buy houses, you can get tattoos, you can
I
change your
do.
hair,
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
you can hire and fire your agent, you can get sponsorship deals, you can do all this stuff that you just can't do on the newer games anymore. And it just creates a much and it's more arcadey. It's honestly a good balance of simulation and arcade. And that's
Mm.
I kind of want my football game to kind of meet that where yes, it's realistic, but it's also fun to play. And that's where Madden '08 sits, is that it's just fun to play, where the physics and everything
Yeah.
aren't just frustrating.
Who was your
Like the
team?
Frostbite, the team, oh my gosh, the
Yeah,
Steelers,
the
forever
Steelers.
and
Okay.
always.
Okay.
You
All right.
pick a team at 8 years old, and then you suffer the rest of your life with it. You
That's
know,
true. That is
you
true.
never change your loyalty.
That is true. You're not wrong. Do you have a favorite multiplayer game? Like, not non-sports, of course.
If I oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I have to really think. The game that provided me the most fun as a multiplayer game all time, I would definitely say I don't really play multiplayer games that much, but if I were to pick one, I would
Hmm.
definitely say Black Ops It's between Black Ops 1
Call
and
of Duty.
3 because Black
Okay.
Ops 1 was fun for its like maps and overall vibe, but Black Ops 3 is where I actually had friends to play this game with. So
Makes sense. Yeah. But not Halo.
so
I'm surprised you didn't say Halo when we had a discussion about all the Xbox early on.
Halo, I'm gonna sound so uncultured when I say this. I've really never played the Halo series that much. I'll be
Wow.
honest with you.
Okay.
I have one of every Xbox version, like the Series X, the
Uh,
Xbox One, the 360, and
uh,
original Xbox. I bought the Halo games. I have one, two, and I have Halo 3 ODST because it came free with one of my Xboxes.
mhm.
I did have fun playing local multiplayer on ODST, but I just really couldn't get into it. And
Okay.
that's another thing is that I'm gonna sound uncultured when I say I can't get into Zelda either.
I'm with you. I never got into Zelda either, but everyone loves
And
it.
poke and Pokemon too. I feel like if you weren't there
Same.
from the beginning, you have a really
Yeah.
hard time getting into it. I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah. I played Pokemon Snap and Coliseum on Nintendo 64, but I never got into the Game Boy games like the red, yellow, all that stuff. It was never a thing I was interested in. Same with Zelda. People seem to love Zelda, and people. I played Ocarina, I think, and that's the only one I played like start to finish. And I played snippets of the others, but it just never really appealed to me. So
That reminds me, I actually have one Pokemon thing in my collection just because I thought it
mhm.
was the coolest thing ever, and I
Yeah,
still think it's one of the coolest things ever.
okay,
Gotta move some stuff here.
yeah, no problem, no problem. I don't think I own any Pokemon games to my knowledge.
The
Yep, the
orange,
Pikachu 64. Yep.
yeah, I absolutely love. I love the aesthetic of it. I love when his cheeks light up when you turn on the system, the Pokeball. They have to make the special shell and everything just to make sure this looked good. Like I love it. I really do.
I haven't seen an orange one before. I've seen a lot of blue ones for sale, but
Yeah,
never the
the
orange one.
yeah, the blue one is a lot more common in like the rest of the world, but the orange one was for Japan specifically.
I see. Okay, gotcha.
The one they have for Europe is basically just like the same blue one, but just like a bunch of stickers instead of the custom molded shell.
Okay,
So it's kind of the lackluster one of the bunch, but the orange one from Japan always like stuck out to me, and I love it honestly.
okay.
It's one of the only Pokemon things I actually have in my collection currently.
Right, right.
So
Yeah. What about console wise? Do you have a favorite console of all time?
favorite console all time.
Yeah, would it be Xbox?
I think it would be the Xbox simply because it's what I had at the time, and it was where I had a lot of my favorite games and a lot of that all that stuff.
I
Because
think, you know,
I didn't have an Xbox 360 until like 2008,
yeah.
and then that one died. The arcade it red ringed pretty badly, and
Uh-huh.
then 2010 is when we got the Elite, and that's the one we've had for the last 15 years.
I think the original Xbox was probably, holds a special place in my heart because it was the first time that online multiplayer, in my opinion, really worked when you had Xbox Live, right? Dreamcast tried it. Dreamcast wasn't a good experience. PS2, you could get a little adapter to put on and play online with people. But I think Xbox really started the whole online multiplayer thing and made it great. I have a lot of memories playing many online games with friends on Xbox.
Because the original Xbox was actually the first real console I ever owned. Like I had the Game Boy at the time, but like that wasn't a console per se. So like this was my
Right.
first, even as a hand-me-down, it was still my first real console for
Hmm.
a couple of years, and that's what got me by, and I was more than happy with it.
Yeah.
Speaking of Dreamcast, I did forget
Yeah.
a really rare thing that I have.
Sure.
They're not as so. This
Yeah.
is a Dreamcast zip disk.
Okay.
It was made by iOmega. So the story behind this is that there was supposed to be a Dreamcast add-on, kind of like the 64 disk drive, if you've ever heard of that.
Yep. Yep.
And the Sega engineers were all about it. They had everything ready to go. You were going to be able to build games on that accessory. You were going to be able to do basically everything that the 64 disk drive can do, including internet access, all that kind of stuff. And then because they realized that the zip format was dying around the time of 2000, they kind of just cut it off. So a lot of these zip disks kind of just went unused. And
So is there a game on that disc, or that's just what you have to use to develop a game? Or
yeah, this is the main peripheral you would have used. to just use the system in general. A lot of these are just blank because they canceled it so quickly that by the time a lot of these developers got these kind of systems, got these development disks, they kind of just discontinued them and they really never got to develop anything for them. So a lot of them are blank. There've been really rare cases that they actually have
Gotcha.
had anything on them. And the zip drive itself is harder to come by. Apparently, there's been one sold in like 2018. It went for a few $1,000s.
Okay.
There's only been like known peripherals that have actually sold like that.
Gotcha.
That that zip disk was like $200.
Okay. Gotcha.
That's
So you,
price you pay for rarity. So
yeah, yeah. Well, that brings me to a good question. You collect a lot of rare stuff, and maybe stuff that isn't, a lot of times if I buy a game, I can look at, the past 50 times it's been sold and what price did it sell for. But this stuff's so rare, you can't really do that. So how do you personally look at something and say, I think that's a good deal, or what's your threshold for, yeah, I need to buy that. It's a good price.
Um, so, so for the more like common games, like the retail games, I definitely use price charting a lot more times than not. And I also kind of judge it based on what I've seen on prices I've seen before. For like the rarer stuff, it's much harder to do. You kind of have to like know people who know more than you for them to tell you whether it's a good deal or not. There's been a lot of times where I've seen like an eBay listing for something that's really cool, but the price seemed too good to be true, or the price seemed way too expensive. And I've always DM'd them asking, "Hey, is this a good deal or not?" And they'll usually say, "That's a great deal," or "Wow, they're really gouging you there,"
Who do you
or this
DM
seller's not.
when you say you DM someone? Obviously not the seller, right? Because they're just going to say, "Oh yeah, it's a great deal, buy it."
Yeah, so so when you get into like development collecting, you kind of have to know people to kind of get your feet wet.
Gotcha.
I know there's a guy named Andrew. I know he's sold me a lot of the collection stuff. Some of the stuff you've seen on here, some of the stuff has come from him. And then there's my buddy Thomas. I think his name is Thomas. He usually just goes by his screen name, but he's definitely sold me some stuff. He's definitely let me know about some prices and things like that. And then I have a Japanese contact who I have on Twitter. He'll send me some stuff sometimes, and then we'll kind of just like shoot the breeze about that kind of stuff and what's a
Gotcha.
good deal, what's not a good deal.
Okay. Yeah,
So
no,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah, with that kind of thing, you kind of just have to know people. With what
Yeah.
like whereas for retail games, you can kind of just look it up online. So it's
Yeah.
a little
No,
bit
that makes
tougher.
makes a lot of sense. Do you have any advice for people who are looking to maybe just start getting into collecting, or maybe people who have all the common stuff and want to start, collecting some more rare items like you have?
Definitely try to do research and don't try to force yourself to collect things that you don't like. Always try to
Hmm.
collect things that you know you actually want and not just because it's rare or that it costs a lot of money. Like if you're genuinely interested, you should try and get it. If you're trying to get it just because it's rare and valuable and you don't actually want it, because I've had that happen to me, don't just save your money and just get something you actually want.
Yeah,
And
that
yeah,
makes
you
sense.
definitely want to, yeah, do your research and just, collect what you actually want and not what people tell you you should.
Yeah, I think it's important to like not want to buy something just because it's expensive and it's popular and it's highly sought after because you might have no interest in it. A prime example of that for me is Earthbound. I never had an
Hmm.
interest in the game Earthbound. I know it's like $300 or something, but it's not like a game that I feel that I had a huge interest in. That's good. That's definitely good advice. In terms of if people wanted to see some of your content, I know you mentioned TikTok and things like that. What social media accounts do you have, and how can people find you on those accounts?
So I am on YouTube as just Rogue Orange. And then I'm also on TikTok under the same handle. And then I'm also gosh, I'm trying to remember which ones. I have I have Twitter and I have Instagram, but the
Okay.
underscores are different for each one, but it's the Rogue
Wow.
Orange.
Okay.
But if you see like the orange profile picture with the pixelated, that's definitely me.
That's you. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, you'll know it's me because I
Yeah.
usually try to keep the descriptions and everything about the same on each of my accounts, so it's really hard to like not find me.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, very cool. No, I definitely, I hope people follow you and you have some cool stuff to show off. And I've definitely learned a lot and seen a lot of rare things that, I never knew existed or that I've ever seen before. But, we're kind of running low on time here. So, again, thanks for joining me today. It's been a pleasure to chat with you.
It was good to be here, yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So, everybody, thanks for joining, and we'll see you next week on another episode of Video Game Collectors on Call. Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye.